Jesse Carvana, the Director of the Hoosier Environmental Council, Indiana's largest environmental policy organization. We're happy to be with Brandon Seitz, the Director of the Energy Office for the state of Indiana. Thank you, Brandon, for being here.
Thank you.
Brandon, I wanted to have your views on some issues that the state faces with respect to the environment and see where the Daniels campaign stands on this issue. Sure. I want to start off with the issue of energy and the role of renewable energy. Clearly, renewable energy is here to stay in Indiana. We're seeing some promising developments with respect to some wind farms. I wanted to see where this administration or the campaign stands with respect to the idea of renewable electricity standard.
Okay. Thank you, Jesse. Renewable electricity standard for the state. I think in the past there was certainly some concern about what the size that would entail, how many percent would be asked to be placed in the renewable category. I think last year there was signs from our standpoint that we weren't against renewable electricity standard per se, but definitely wanted to make sure that what percentage we asked is going to be tangible percentages that could be reached by the goal variance asked. And that they included certain items that we felt it was important to make a true portfolio of diversity that would really help the state move forward, not only in clean energy, but also business, economics, residential rates, things of that nature.
Is there a percentage that the campaign would be comfortable committing to Indiana aspiring to?
I don't think, at this point, I would not commit to a certain number.
But you're not averse to the idea.
But I would say we're not averse to the idea, given the proper parameters.
Okay. And do you see this bill as being something that ought to have renewable energy resources only, or would it include other energy resources?
I know last year the bill that was there had renewable energy resources, and one key component that we talked about was having a slight percentage of that being involved with clean coal technologies. Coal gasification, IGCC, and of course, as you know, here lately, not only have we talked about clean coal and the possibility of carbon sequestration, but also had the Carbon Capture and Storage Summit last month, in which I know you attended.
Yes.
And brought in the environmental community, the business community, academic community, and I think so. Part of that was saying yes, we want renewables, but we also need those other alternatives. And again, it's a cleaner version, and we can make it even better through carbon capture.
Does the administration consider IGCC to be a renewable resource?
No, I would not call it a renewable resource. I would call it an alternative resource, alternative energy.
So let's switch gears to talking about agriculture. What are the administration's, or actually I should say here, the campaign's perspectives on how to deal with CAFOs, something that has come up repeatedly by our membership as an area of concern, the impact that CAFOs might have on water. I know you're here with expertise in energy, but
right.
I wanted to know if, on behalf of the campaign, you might share some perspective on what you think the administration might do if Governor Daniels was reelected.
Well, I think as far as the CAFO issue, one of the things, a couple things that the Department of Ag have instituted, the Certified Livestock Program, which I think, again, it gives a chance for these farmers to show what numbers they have. They're permitted on a zero emission basis in IDEM. I think that there's a lot of good checks and balances on these feeding operations. I think there's some misconceptions sometimes that the fact that these operations involve large pits that are, again, permitted well, they're inspected, and they're not in floodplains, for example, things like that. I know that during the floods, one of the things that came up was they asked, well, how many of these confined feed operations leaked out, leaked out? I mean, none, because they're not in the areas that were flooded. So, I think we do take those precautions in permitting these without hindering the growth of the agricultural sector in modern times. And I come from a farm. I come from a small farm. My mom grew up on a farm that was a sustainable. They sold some of their stuff in town, but for the most part, they ate what they grew. So that's great. That's nice. It's a great lifestyle. But we're also living in a time with so many people on Earth who need food and need it at a cheaper cost. These are ways that you can produce that type of food in that manner.
Are there any specific policies that you think need to be in place, potentially for consideration next session,
of that, the carbon sequestration, the carbon capture and storage summit, part of that was having this working living document to talk about that issue. Along with that, talk about what our carbon policy should be moving forward. It's hard to say what a state should do, especially here, a heavy coal state, to talk about what, we have to see what the feds are going to bring down as well. So, I think you have to, discussions can be taken internally, but you also have to know what's going to be coming down from the top in that regard, which, I think we'll know fairly soon after the election which way that's going to go. And we do know, we do understand that both presidents of Canada have talked about this issue and are serious about it at whatever level that is. So that's not unrecognized by the campaign.
Well, let's say, suppose that an Obama or a McCain administration were to then pass carbon cap like legislation as you're alluding to. What do you think that means about what Indiana needs to be proactively potentially reduce the impact that such regulations might have on Hoosier businesses?
Well, I think if you look at what Tom Easterly has been talking about, in fact, in the last Air Pollution Control Board meeting, he talked about with the court's decision on CARE and what the state can do to develop its own system, being able to integrate into that and not stop what we've been doing for businesses to get in there, or to be a part of that. I think again, Indiana will consider different ideas. I can't say that we're committed to any category, and I also am concerned that I don't think these regional cap and trades and that are the answer either. I think we need to again see what kind of policies come from the federal level while having our conversations internally in reaction to those.
Okay, and I guess the last question on the energy front, the carbon emissions front, is where does transportation fit into this whole thing? There were some studies that were done by Purdue and IUPUI and SCU project about how carbon emissions seem to be heavily derived from the transportation sector. What do you think might be some of the things that the Downs administration may consider doing in the next term if the administration were elected?
Well, I think you're talking a lot. The Marty Irwin presentation that did show a lot of the carbon action being on the interstates and things of that nature. Again, I think it's what's going to take place at the federal level. I know that there's been some talk of light rail or public transportation, larger mass transit ideas, but again, under study and figuring out what the cost of those would be. Again, being the expertise I have is directly energy. These are things that I gather sometimes and on the side, and I would also suggest, talking to the Department of Transportation or other folks in that group, and please do that because they would be able to give you that information.
A couple more questions.
All right.
Going back to the whole issue of renewable energy and IGCC and the sort of energy mix that the administration has put forward in the past, one of the things that has been observed by the environmental community is the concern about the potential rate impact of renewable electricity, but maybe not proportional of the rate impact of IGCC. Should those be held to different standards, or should we have equal concern about the rate impact of both of those policies?
Well, I think okay, yeah.
Your timing is good.